The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of AM 640 Toronto Radio.
10, 9, 8, 7.
Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman. AM 640. Toronto Radio.
Hi, I'm Space. This is View from Space. I want to welcome you in if you're driving around town, taking in all the wonderful sights and smells this weekend in Toronto with Caravana happening right now. Up and down the lakeshore. Just an incredible, vibrant city this evening as I speak to you from the very center at Yonge and Dundas here in Toronto. Also want to welcome you if you're at work and listening on AM 640 Toronto Radio. I want to welcome you in too if you're listening on Star Choice on Channel 865, or if you are, as they say, the best seat in the house for A View from Space, sitting in front of your Mac or your PC at home, logged on to 640toronto.com, picking up the live audio streaming. Wherever you are in the world, I welcome you in. Just a side thought here. You don't think they've stopped chemtrailing Toronto because Beckham's in town, do you? I kind of get that impression. They've really laid off for almost, going on 2 weeks now. Not a single chemtrail in the sky. Just our weather. Our normal weather. I just thought maybe I'd mention that. Because when Bex blows town tomorrow night, what do we expect in our skies over Toronto on Monday? We'll see. They're not faring as well in Beck's old home, over Rome. I just got this email from Bob as I walked in the door here tonight. Hi, Space. I'm usually living in Toronto, but I currently am in Crewe, England, between Liverpool and Manchester. Rolls-Royce makes their cars here in Crewe. July 31st was a beautiful day. That was Tuesday. Clear skies, loads of sunshine. Temps peaked at a low 20. Also, there were high-flying airplanes leaving vapor trails that did not blow away. By midnight, the entire sky above Crewe was covered with a checkerboard of chemtrails. Again, on August 3rd, the planes were back, and the clear skies of the morning were completely overcast by noon. Rain is in the forecast. Due to the weird weather England's been receiving and the massive flooding, I thought you'd like to know about these events. Thank heaven the flood didn't reach as far north as Crewe, where I am. Cheers, Bob. So you see this chemtrail effect that they're inflicting the world on is not just in our neck of the woods. It's happening worldwide. Tonight's show is not about chemtrails. What a week it was. Started off innocently enough, but when we got to midweek, we found out what the Illuminati were really planning. I know this may not be on your mind at all, and I'm not talking about the 35W collapsed bridge for a moment here. I'm talking about the reason for it, or I'm about to speak about the reason for the 35W bridge collapse. Did you hear me correctly? There is a reason for it. And it's not faulty maintenance, as the finger pointing in America has already started about who's to blame for this. It happened this morning, Saturday, August 4th. I'll talk about it a little bit more and tie it in with the 35W bridge collapse. More into the show here tonight on A View from Space on AM 640 Toronto Radio. But what I would like to comment on right now is this event that happened this morning happened at Cape Canaveral, Florida. And when you talk about Cape Canaveral, then you know NASA is involved. Their newest Mars lander departed Earth this weekend, this morning. It is carrying the words and art of visionaries from Voltaire to Carl Sagan, which I will be talking about part of the evening here. It's so important to the Illuminati that they find the building blocks of life on Mars. Okay, so they must find water. Water is the theme. Now you're beginning to get a small glimpse into the 35W bridge collapse. It's water, too, isn't it? Yes, a blood sacrifice was performed this past Wednesday to ensure the black magic spell of NASA's Mars lander will have a successful mission. More to come, of course. Space, just getting started on AM 640 Toronto Radio. This is A View from Space.
The numbers have fluctuated greatly. We were told initially that 7 people were dead. Now that number is at 5. As many as 30 were said to be missing. We're told now that 8 people are missing. Regardless of the figure, it's an agonizing wait for family members who are standing by for word about their loved ones.
Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman. AM 640 Toronto Radio.
I'm Space. This is AM 640 Toronto Radio and A View from Space. Okay, it was exactly the same thing as Katrina. Everybody was crowded off to the Superdome. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, everyone went to the Metrodome. That's right. The Red Cross was there, helping people out, but no information whatsoever. Tediously slow. And of course, you've heard that report that originally that number 7 that has been haunting us all summer long appeared as the very first number for the death toll. 7 dead. Then it slipped down to 3, then 4. Then the next day, 5. It took the whole day to get the 5th dead person out of the water and off the bridge, concrete. But here we have fluctuating numbers. In other words, what we're having here is spin on the information and not allowing the people who are wondering where their loved ones were. Totally no information was given to them at all. Sit and wait until they play with their numbers. Now we have 5 dead. Originally, there was over 20 or 30 missing, and now that number has, poof, magically gone down to 8. Very interesting, the way the information came out so slowly. And they were talking about the water and how fast-flowing it was and the heavy currents. Hey, in the springtime, the Mississippi River floods a little bit. It swells. But in the middle of the summertime, we have a slow, meandering current. Are you kidding me? So it happened on Wednesday. Lammas, a cross-quarter witches' holiday. Not only that, but August 1st, not only is Lammas, but it also is the anniversary of the very day the 1936 Olympics opened in Berlin with one of the most famous speeches that Hitler ever made, telling the world the Germans would prevail and show that they were the super race on the planet. That's correct. The bridge collapsed on the anniversary of the 1936 opening day of the Berlin Olympics. Now let's look at the date again. The 8th month, August. The first day, Lammas. 8 and 1 is 9. And when I first saw the story, which was very early on Wednesday, the very day of the collapse, I was watching when they first flicked over to it, and they kept drilling the number of the time that the bridge collapsed exactly. 6:05 Central Standard Time. 6:05. Drop the 0. 6 and 5 is 11. Let me just review the numbers for you. 8th month, day 1, a 9, a 6 and 5, 11. The 9/11 signature is buried in this event. That's not all. There's more. I'll get to it on AM 640 Toronto Radio and A View from Space. But the 9/11 signature was in the day and the time. They also marked their numbers in the bridge itself. I'll be getting to that. A number that reoccurs. But I want you, if you have not yet, because a lot of people will go, blood sacrifice? What are you saying? I'm saying they knocked the bridge down on purpose. At exactly 6:05 with a button, a switch that turned on the machine that is able to create earthquakes, that much shaking. A machine that is able to create a massive amount of low-frequency electronic waves that can actually trigger an earthquake. Triggered this bridge to fall. At exactly the time they wanted, 6:05 Central. On the first day of the 8th month. And 3 days later, that wonderful, magical, perfect number 3. 3 days later, NASA launches the Mars lander, departs Earth early this morning with all kinds of goodies aboard and its mission to find the building blocks of life on Mars, which they will. Water is what they're after. Ice on Mars. This little lander is going to dig through the sand and dirt and get to the ice and analyze it for us. And then they're going to prove that life once existed on Mars. There's a timeline for this. Oh, yes, there is. It's an incredible thing because they have these things all figured out. It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Take this, for instance. Laura Bush appeared yesterday in Minnesota, St. Paul. She was announced to arrive later this week on Monday, this past Monday, July 30th, 2 days before the bridge collapsed. the University of Minnesota announced that First Lady Laura Bush would appear later in the week at a youth issues conference at the university. She was going to spend Friday helping America's Youth Conference at the campus, focusing on shared strategies pertaining to youth literacy, teen violence, drugs, and alcohol abuse. The university had invited 300 representing education, foundation, faith, community-based organizations, research institutions, and service organizations. The number 3 in that 300 is the operative number there. The number of royalty. Because, you see, First Lady Bush has that connotation. Not only was it announced Monday that First Lady Laura Bush would just happen to be in the St. Paul area, but it also coincides with the Republican National Committee's summer conference being held when? This weekend in Minneapolis, St. Paul. You cannot tell me that this is a coincidence. I refuse to hear it. Now, whether or not First Lady Laura Bush and the people that are going to this Republican National Committee summer conference knew, well, I can't tell you that. I bet George W. knew. He can keep a secret. He's proved it. And now has the position where he has to keep the biggest secrets. So here's what I want you to do. If you're sitting at your Mac or your PC right now, if you're listening to me in your car or if you're at work, take my word for it. This bridge didn't collapse like it had stress, fatigue, flaws. It collapsed as if someone shook it down. You will even hear comments of live witnesses saying it was shaking. And not falling, shaking. Then it fell. I want you to get on the internet. I want you to go to YouTube. It's got the quickest, fastest way to get it. And check out CNN's exclusive 13-second bridge collapse. That's right. It's a 13. And all you do is when you get into YouTube, just type in, search in the search window, footage of I-35W bridge collapse. That's footage of I-35W bridge collapse. It's the very first one in the top row, and it's 13 seconds long. You have a look at it. If you haven't already seen it, then you pick up your telephone at 416-870-6400, and you tell me that fell because of fatigue. All right? Or you can call me and say, that doesn't look like, it just was deteriorating and then fell. Watch it collapse. Go to YouTube. Footage of I-35W bridge collapse. Just type that in to the search window. It's 13 seconds long. It won't take you long to have a quick look at it if you haven't seen it. It's CNN's exclusive. You will have those words in the picture. CNN exclusive. Footage of I-35W bridge collapse. And then call me at 416-870-6400. Spaceman on AM 640, Toronto Radio. Back with more in a minute.
The opinions expressed expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of AM 640 Toronto Radio.
All I remember feeling is just feeling this boom, boom. We fell on a car.
It was terrifying. It was just like something out of the movies.
When our building started vibrating, we thought maybe it was an earthquake.
Saw 118-wheeler on fire, the cab on fire, and the driver still in it, trapped obviously, and he was dead.
He goes deeper into today's headlines than anyone else dares to go. But can you take it? This is A View from Space with the Spaceman. AM 640, Toronto Radio.
I'm the guy they call Space. This is AM 640, Toronto Radio, and A View from Space. I am saying to you now that the 35W bridge collapse in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota was a blood ritual sacrifice for NASA's newest Mars lander, which departed Mother Earth earlier today. And I asked you to check out YouTube and see the footage of the I-35W bridge collapsing. And then I asked you to call and make your comments. Spaceman, you're on the air. Meek, go ahead.
Shaking.
Go ahead, Meek.
It was shaking. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I watched it and it was shaking. It fell before it shook.
So, did you see how quickly it went down?
It looks like it's like a poof cloud thingy, and it just falls down real quick. But you could say shake.
You betcha. Thank you so much for the call. Meek, do you believe that fell down because of stress and of fatigue and the bridge is just too old?
Nah, can't happen.
Spaceman, go ahead, Matthew. You're on AM 640, Toronto Radio.
Yeah, hi, Space. I was checking out the video, and like you said, it looks like someone pushed the button to make it fall.
Absolutely. It falls so quickly. You know how long it took to fall?
You said 13 seconds, right?
13 seconds for this video to play. It took 4 seconds in all for the bridge to go.
Oh, okay.
Now, what stress-fractured building or bridge would fall completely in 4 seconds?
I don't know. It must have been
It would go in increments if it was indeed because of stress fractures.
Mm-hmm.
And because of its age.
Yeah,
it would not fall as quickly and smoothly as it did. Hey, it was almost as smooth as the World Trade Centers went down, huh?
Yeah, it looks like the bridge was almost held up by strings, and someone just cut out the strings, and the middle section fell out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Thanks, Matthew, for the call.
Thank you.
You see what I mean? I don't have to take any more callers. I know there's a lot of people saying to themselves, you know what? When you look at that collapsing bridge, it does not look like it was due to fatigue or stress fractures. So now I offer you this. Reports from Russia's Institute of Solar Terrestrial Physics, located in Irkutsk, reported that their Siberian Solar Radio Telescope detected a massive ultra-low frequency blast emanating from latitude 45 degrees 00 minutes north, longitude 93 degrees 15 minutes west, at an exact moment and location of the catastrophic collapse of this nearly 2,000-foot-long bridge in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. To the horrific destruction of the Interstate 35W bridge, which spanned the Mississippi River, here's what was reported by the Star Tribune News Service. The 1,907-foot bridge fell into the Mississippi River and onto roadways below. The span was packed with rush hour traffic, and dozens of vehicles fell with the bridge, leaving scores of dazed computers scrambling for their lives. Russian military reports state that the total collapse of such a massive bridge, and in the absence of evidence linking its destruction to terrorist activity, could only have been accomplished by an acoustic weapon of which the United States military is known to possess. These reports go on to state that one of the United States' primary research organizations into acoustic weapons research is located at Augsburg College, which is located, listen carefully, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And most importantly, this research area for acoustic weapons at Augsburg College in Minneapolis is less than 1 mile from the Interstate 35W bridge. To the exact reason of why and what exactly happened in this catastrophe, we can only speculate right now. But what is known about the United States' past history of using sophisticated weapons on their own citizens for research or other purposes certainly lies in the realm of the possibility that this horrific tragedy is rooted in the use of the ultra-low frequency weapon. To the past usage of these new types of weapons, using sound, you can go back to the 1980s, the United States research into their use, as reported by CNN. This is what CNN has said about these new types of weapons using sound. Imagine the implications of a weapon with no visible trace. A weapon that could knock out tanks, ships, planes, buildings, as fast as the speed of light. The same technology, with modifications, could disorientate and even tranquilize military personnel, rendering them virtually helpless in the battle zone. These are the new weapons of war. For the past 40 years, the world has been riveted by the threat of nuclear war, and more recently with the prospect of space defenses using lasers and other modern technologies. That's what CNN stated. Going back to the 1980s, they had this kind of technology down to a fine art. Lightning is the most dramatic form of energy to be found in nature. Scientists have succeeded in creating limited types of artificial lighting, and some think that these could be the forerunners of a new type of directed energy weapon. Part of a family of weapons that operate within the radio frequency segment of the electromagnetic spectrum, which is why they're referred to as radio frequency weapons. For the dangers of the ultra-low frequency weapons being used against civilians, here's a warning from Dr. Rauni Liinakild, medical doctor, the former chief medical officer of Lapland, northern Finland, who warned in 1999 when the use of electromagnetic fields, extra low, ELF, and ultra-low, ULF, frequencies and microwaves aimed deliberately at certain individuals, groups, buildings, objects, and even the general population to cause diseases, disorientation, chaos, physical and emotional pain, breaks into the awareness of the general population. A public outcry is inevitable when these things begin to happen. I believe they used an ultra-low frequency weapon on the 35W bridge in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota this past Wednesday. And as to the exact reason of why the United States would be targeting Minneapolis, St. Paul with such a massive ultra-low frequency blast, it was used as a human sacrifice ritual to ensure the success of the Phoenix Mars lander that was launched earlier today, just 3, and that royal number, 3 days after the event. The Phoenix Mars lander takes off. You heard it so many times if you've listened to A View from Space on AM 640 Toronto Radio. As it is above, so it is below. That's the alchemist's belief. So is sacred geometry numerology, and astrology, the three tenets of the Illuminati. You'll understand this horrific event that's being passed off as an accident better than you've ever thought possible if you keep it here on AM 640, Toronto Radio and A View from Space, as I reveal the truth about the 35W bridge collapse and the reason for it. You will see the unmistakable and irrefutable evidence clearly that this was not, repeat, not what you've been told by the Illuminati-controlled media. It was a blood sacrifice for the Phoenix Mars lander. Back with more in a moment. It's Space on A View from Space on AM 640, Toronto Radio.
I was a little afraid that something would roll on top of us and we'd be trapped, and all I could think of was this was not the way I wanted to die.
History buffs, monarchists masticate, truth seekers cheer. He's the spaceman with A View from Space. AM 640, Toronto Radio.
I'm Space, it's AM 640, Toronto Radio. I believe the 35W bridge collapse in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota was a blood sacrifice for today's liftoff of the Phoenix Mars lander. And of course, the Illuminati-controlled mass media is churning out junk like, oh, the politicians pointing their fingers at one another, with just incredible things to say. Like, for instance, they're taking the shot at the $500 billion spent in Iraq. We've got falling bridges in this country. I see a connection between messed up priorities. $500 billion could fix every single bridge in the country. Governor Tim Pawlenty said outside experts would review the decisions of the state engineers to shore up the problems with the heavily traveled 40-year-old bridge in Minneapolis. And engineers had decided to periodically inspect the steel superstructure beneath the Interstate 35W bridge and bolt on reinforcement plates where any flaws were found. But that work, which Pawlenty said fit in to the state's budget, was postponed by resurfacing and repair work that was going on when the bridge actually buckled and fell this past Wednesday. The anniversary, by the way, of the 1936 Olympic opening in Berlin, with Hitler making one of his biggest speeches in his entire career. Yes, that's right. Lammas, August 1st. A cross-quarter witching holiday, which, as I've already stated, the 1936 Olympics opened in Berlin. That very day, the 35W bridge collapsed. And first reports of over 100 injured, 28 in hospital, many as 30 missing. And then all of a sudden it shrunk down to like 8. They said 7 originally was the death toll. Then down to 3, then 4. And then on Thursday, 5. "18 construction workers, by the way, were on the bridge when it collapsed." That from the head of the bridge division for Progressive Contractors Incorporated in St. Michael, Tom Sloan. As I just stated, the crew was placing concrete finish on the bridge for what he called a routine resurfacing project, and they were fixing the lighting standards. It was the final item on the phase of the project. And then suddenly, the bridge gave way. They said they basically rode the bridge down into the water. They were sliding into cars, and cars were sliding into them. One of the workers was accounted for. One was unaccounted for. And of course, the collapsed bridge is just blocks from the heart of Minneapolis, near tourist attractions. And the Metrodome. Can you believe it? Major League Baseball on that evening had 25,000 people on Wednesday night in the Metrodome to watch who else but the Kansas City, what? Royals. Yeah. The Royals played Minnesota. The Twins. Do you know, by the way, that the Minnesota Twins were the original Washington Senators? There are two Washington Senator teams. The original was the Minnesota Twins. That's why the Twins, not the Twin Cities. The Twins are the Twins because there are two, count them, two Washington Senator teams. The second one is the Texas Rangers visiting here in Toronto. When they moved out of Washington, they became the Rangers. And you know who owned the Texas Rangers when they weren't president? The Bush family. That's right. By the way, the Twins got beat in that game, too. But the night after, they postponed the game, the Thursday game between the Royals and the Twins was called off. Oh, yeah, they had a moment of silence in the Metrodome to pay homage to the blood sacrifice. And then, first pitch, 7:05, Central Time. And they said, oh, we didn't want to have traffic problems sending 25,000 fans back into the congested highways. Well, I tell you, I am absolutely shocked that no one else has brought this up. But then no one else has seen the numbers. And there are more numbers. I'm going to get to more of those numbers as the show progresses here tonight, which will absolutely blow you away. The number 13 is front and center. Let me just take a couple of quick calls. Spaceman, go ahead, Al. You're on AM 640 Toronto Radio.
Hey, Space. It always seems convenient that there's people working on any of these structures. Whenever we have these type of catastrophes, there's always crews working. So how hard would it be to slip the people in while they're doing the surfacing or whatever, and slip your little crew in to load the thing up for what you want to happen? I mean, even that Timothy McVeigh thing. Remember, there was that girl that said she was working to catch up on her work when in the back door she seen crews working on the structure just before that happened.
Oh, absolutely. And you take the World Trade Center, Securicor, the company that ran the security operations for the Twin Towers, was none other than Neil Bush, brother of George W. And that building was shut down on the weekend of the Friday, the Saturday and the Sunday, and then the Tuesday, the Monday it fell.
Absolutely. It just every time. Look,
it was in a lockdown. Actually, in lockdown, they said they were making improvements to their security.
How about New Orleans with the dikes? There was people that were saying that they hadn't seen anybody work on them in years. And just before that had happened, the Katrina thing, suddenly there was crews magically doing some type of little repair work on them.
Absolutely. The dams to hold that lake back from flowing into New Orleans was sabotaged with depth charges.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I did that show a few times. I had that on.
Oh, this is where I get all my good info, Space, right from the man.
Thanks, Al, for the call. Spaceman, AM 640. Go ahead, Jeff, you're on.
Hi, Gary. You know as well as I do that the information that we get immediately preceding a catastrophe like this is usually the most accurate.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right out of the horse's mouth. That's when you got to catch it.
Well, quick. It's before the control gets they get their fingers into it, and surprisingly enough, I listened to a structural engineer within 3 hours of the collapse being interviewed, and he said that he was absolutely astounded because of the number of redundancies that are built in that provide for, if there is a catastrophic event, that it takes place in a very, very slow and controlled manner. Not an immediate, like the 4 seconds. Like I was talking about this afternoon. 4 seconds for a bridge of that structure, and you don't resurface a bridge that isn't sound. You do that work first. If it does need to be
absolutely.
done.
We know that. So there were, what you could say, mistakes made, and these will probably all come out. It'll always be the same way with these Illuminati events. After the fact, there will be the finger pointing, and then there wasn't enough done. Or the guy dropped the ball. That's my favorite one lately. This guy dropped the ball.
Well,
they drop the ball all the time.
Gary, the other thing that I find so funny is because this just goes right in with Homeland Security and getting people all on edge, and you know that if you got them on edge, they're much easier to control. And it's just, if you're terrified of your infrastructure, you won't want to go anywhere.
Absolutely. Everybody that crosses a bridge right now, Jeff, you're right on the money. They're just they're just instilling fear all over North America, as a matter of fact.
Well, they don't want people to move, because if you're not moving, you're easier to keep an eye on.
Well, you see, when people are afraid, they're not sure of what's happening. When you're not sure of what's happening, you're called confused. When you're confused, you're easily controlled. Thanks for the call, Jeff.
Okay, Gary.
Spaceman, AM 640, Toronto Radio. Tonight's show is not only about the bridge collapse and NASA's newest Mars lander, the Phoenix lander, departing Earth this morning, but also about the people that are involved in our motion picture business, that are really now to the forefront of casting the spells and of sending the messages. It's not enough now that the messages are on your headlines. Now the movies, more than ever, are pointed directly at fear or guilt. Using guilt for your climate change. That's all about guilt. Fear is the war on terror. And this is only going to build. And build it will. Through the 2008 Olympics, and then through to the 2012 Olympics in London. That is going to be some ride. It's all ahead of us. Spaceman, AM 640, Toronto Radio. Back with more in a moment.
The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of AM 640 Toronto Radio. Deprogramming the brainwashed simply by uncovering the truth. He's the Spaceman with a view from space. AM 640, Toronto Radio.
I'm the Spaceman. This is AM 640, Toronto Radio. Yes, the 35W bridge in Minneapolis, St. Paul, was a blood sacrifice for NASA's newest Mars lander. Departed Earth earlier this morning. It'll be carrying the words and visionaries and art from others, from Voltaire to Carl Sagan. More on him deeper into the show tonight. The Vision of Mars mini-disc is what it's called. Secured to the lander, will be the very first library on Mars. They call it a gift from past and present dreamers to possible future settlers. I'm glad you're there, and I wish I was with you. The words, spoken by Carl Sagan. He made a recording that said those words, that was made for this mission before his death in 1996. An excerpt from his book Cosmos is also on board the Phoenix lander. Other musings in written and audio format. Interested? On who's going to Mars? Well, they come from Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, Percival Lowell, the founder of the telescope, and Kim Stanley Robinson. For any science fiction writer, Robinson said, a NASA spokesman, it's really a thrill. Green Mars, the second novel in the classic trilogy, is on the disc. The Phoenix Mars lander was scheduled to blast off before sunrise this morning aboard an unmanned rocket. Its journey to Mars will take about 10 months and cover 422 million miles. Yeah, right. Do you see what I mean about black magic spells from NASA? 422 million mile journey in 10 months. NASA is said to be aiming for a landing within Mars's Arctic Circle next May. The three-legged Phoenix, three again royalty, is equipped with a long digger that will penetrate the red earth and the ice underneath that they hope is there. Then I'm sure they'll find. And they have tiny ovens that will bake dirt and the ice samples. And if any traces of organic compounds are found, it could indicate that an environment of conducive building block of life is present. Previous Mars missions have pointed to liquid water in the long-ago past, already raising the possibility of life, already planting that seed in our minds. Spaceman AM 640, Toronto Radio. That's what the Mars enthusiasts have been envisioning for decades. The Illuminati have been salivating on this. Life on Mars, both native and human. Kim Stanley Robinson, the man who wrote the book Green Mars, foresees permanent Martian colonies with hundreds and even thousands of people within 100 years. Sort of similar to the Antarctic stations that we've got now on Earth at the poles. I believe in it. I think it's coming, says Robinson. The Planetary Society's silica glass DVD, just 3 inches in diameter, there's the royal number, contains Asimov's I'm in a Marsport without Hilda and The Martian Way. Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles are there, and Arthur C. Clarke's Transit of Earth and The Sands of Mars are there. Jonathan Swift's Gulliver Travels are there. And Tolstoy's Aelita is there. Voltaire's Micromegas, and an excerpt from Kurt Vonnegut's The Siren of Titan is also there. The disc also includes the 19th century Italian astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli's report on Martian channels, or canals, and an excerpt from Percival Lowell, the inventor of the telescope. A small excerpt from his treatise in 1908 called Mars as the Abode of Life. It maintained the canals were built by some form of intelligent life for irrigation. In all, 84 written texts are on the disc. That's a 12. 4 royal numbers. 4 times 3 as well as 63 Mars-related works of art, and 3 radio broadcasts, including the 1938 recreation of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, and the 1940 discussion between H.G. Wells and Orson Welles, who directed the panic-inducing drama, which I've revealed the truth behind before here on AM 640, Toronto Radio, A View from Space. The disc also holds more than 250,000 names of Planetary Society members and others who submitted their names for the one-way ride. Science and science fiction have done a kind of dance over the past century, particularly with respect to Mars. The co-founder of the Planetary Society explained on the disc, Carl Sagan. Science and science fiction have done a kind of dance over the past century, particularly with respect to Mars, Carl Sagan says. Well, no kidding. He was at the forefront of that. He was one of the people that the elite took his idea and ran with it, just like they ran with Charles Darwin, because the fittest to survive in the jungle is the perfect way to say how we live down here. The fittest survive. Instead of looking after your brother, being your brother's keeper. A big question that was asked of Cain, this very bloodline that's perpetrating these atrocious acts on our planet today, from very high up in the highest offices of the lands. Attached to the top platform of the lander, the disk is designed to survive at least 500 years on the surface of Mars. Its label urges, "Attention astronauts, take this with you." Boy, these guys have some imagination, don't they? It's their vision. This is actually its second incarnation. The original vision of Mars disk ended up at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean when Russia's Mars 96 spacecraft failed shortly after launch. Library was later updated, but it stuck with technology from the early 1990s when the original was compiled. In fact, only a few machines on Earth are capable of playing this old, antiquated disc. So says Amir Alexander, a writer and editor with the Planetary Society. The group is hoping future settlers will have the advanced technology to handle the standard codes. He says we have to count on that, we really do. So if they want to hear the DVD up in Mars 100 years later, they're going to have to rebuild an old DVD player. Can you believe this? This is just so absolutely science fiction. And Carl Sagan's line really is true. Science and science fiction have done a kind of dance over the last century. You're right about that. They have just fogged that line between reality and virtual reality so that no one can hardly tell any longer which is which. Is that a NASA animation, or is that really an object sliding through the rings of Saturn? Spaceman back with more in a minute. It's a space show. A View from Space on AM 640 Toronto Radio.
Mystery religions, numerology, the Holy Grail decoded, and he goes deeper than a black hole in today's headlines. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman. AM 640, Toronto Radio.
On Space, it's AM 640, Toronto Radio and A View from Space. I maintain the I-35W bridge, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. Bridge collapse was a blood sacrifice for NASA's newest Mars lander, the Phoenix lander. Emails, space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Graham writes, "Hey, Space, I knew when I saw the footage of the collapse that it was brought down intentionally, and when you mentioned the Satanic Holiday and then the Mars mission, it all made sense. Also, Caravana, going on right now, is another satanic festival. The Trinidadian origins of it were all in honor of the sky god." You and I both know who the so-called sky god is, Zeus, otherwise known as Lucifer. The floats of the parade are very Mardi Gras-like, where the people in the elaborate costumes leading floats are representing gods and goddesses. Signed, Graham. Truer words were never spoken. I was just reading an email. I may share it with you. I may not. Absolutely mind-blowing. Let me just finish off with NASA newest Mars lander. I call it newest because I believe there are 15 attempts. I told you about the radio broadcasts that are on. A recreation of H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds. And I told you about the DVD that's up there with Carl Sagan's voice on it. Some other people. And they actually even entertain the thought that it's conceivable alien life could beat humans to this DVD disc. Under one of many science fiction scenarios. Kim Stanley Robinson, the guy who wrote Green Mars, the one author that the Illuminati are putting up on the pedestal because they like his views. They like his imagination. So they're going to try and make it true. Make it part of the truth about outer space. Robinson said there already might be life on Mars, albeit bacterial and nearly a mile beneath the surface. Even recalled jokingly in his Mars trilogy about this civilization of little red people. You have to imagine a very, 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 very miniaturized, sentient civilization living underground, and they, I suppose, could crawl up onto the disk and have it be like a giant flat room, and they could wander around in an attempt to decode, he said. In that sense, the aliens might have already been there. Isn't that absolutely ludicrous? But aliens are out there. Believe me, they are us. Yeah. And they are going to fake an alien invasion. How do I know that? Well, it's simple. It's very simple, because in the motion pictures for your entertainment / brainwashing, that's what they're showing and pointing toward. And the actors and directors are the messengers. Angelina Jolie, a messenger. Very high-ranking messenger. She's a goodwill ambassador for the UN Refugee Agency. Matter of fact, on her very first UN trip within the United Nations, you know where she went? Arizona in 2004. Where? To Phoenix, of course. Remember? The Phoenix Mars lander. She was visiting supposedly detained asylum seekers at 3 facilities there. And the Southwest Key program, which is a facility for unaccompanied children, what they call unaccompanied children. What is that? On October 24, 2003, she was the first recipient of the newly created Citizen of the World Award by the United Nations Correspondents Association, too. This lady is very high-ranking. Listen, there's more. Since 2005, she has attended the World Economic Forum in Davos, announced the formation of a Council of Business Leaders with UNCHR's Deputy High Commissioner, Wendy Chamberlain, in 2005, and participated in the panel discussion, Human Rights Reduced to Charity, in 2006. Jolie also began lobbying humanitarian interests in Washington, D.C., where she met with congressmen and senators at least 20 times from 2003 till 2006. And just a few weeks ago, I was shocked, absolutely blown away by this. June of this year, just a few weeks ago, Angelina Jolie joined the Council on Foreign Relations when the bipartisan think tank officially approved her membership nomination. She now has a say in shaping America's national foreign policy. Oh, did I mention she's from the bloodline of Cain? She has a private pilot, her own airbase. She has a fondness for Liverpool Football Club because her son Maddox only wants to play for Liverpool. She was named the world's sexiest woman in Swedish magazine Café. Jolie, by the way, in French means pretty. She's the goddaughter of actress Jacqueline Bisset. She graduated from Beverly Hills High School at 16. That's right, 16 years old. Bye-bye high school. She and her brother, this is so revealing. She and her brother, of whom she says she is very close to, publicly spoke out to deny rumors that the two were having an incestuous love affair. That was just 7 years ago. She had a childhood dream once of becoming a funeral director. Spaceman AM 640, Toronto Radio, and A View from Space. Just going through who our entertainers are. On May 27, 2006, Angelina Jolie gave birth to a daughter named Shiloh Nouvelle Jolie Pitt in Swakopmund, Namibia. It was a scheduled cesarean section. Shiloh, according to a long-standing tradition, translation from the Bible, has come to mean the peaceful one. Pitt confirmed that their newly born daughter will have a Namibian passport, and Angelina Jolie decided to offer the first pictures of Shiloh through the distributor Getty Images herself, rather than allowing paparazzi to make these extremely valuable snapshots. People magazine paid more than $4 million for the North American rights. The British magazine Hello got the international rights for $3.5 million. The total rights sale on photos of their baby Shiloh earned up to $10 million worldwide. It was the most expensive celebrity image of all time. So you're telling me this is not an important bloodline? I remarked this, stated this before on AM 640 Toronto Radio and A View from Space. Brad Pitt and Angela Jolie both wear a vial of each other's blood around their own neck. That's how much value they place on the bloodlines. July 26 last year, 06, Madame Tussauds in New York unveiled a wax figure of 2-month-old Shiloh. It was the first infant recreated in wax by Madame Tussauds ever in the history. You get the picture? This is a very important bloodline to the Illuminati. The other babies that were adopted by Angelina Jolie did not get this kind of treatment or command this kind of cash. Her mother is Marceline Bertrand, who is now dead, and her father, John Voight, of Midnight Cowboy. She collects knives, has an interest in mortuary science. She's got tattoos, one of the coordinates representing the locations where she adopted Maddox and Sahara on her left arm, which cover up the Billy Bob Thornton tattoo. And starting in 2005, her relationship with Brad Pitt became one of the most reported celebrity stories worldwide. After Angelina Jolie confirmed her pregnancy in early 2006, the media hype reached a point of insanity, as Reuters described it in their story, the Brangelina fever, among others. There were a bunch of false wedding rumors, including the alleged imminent wedding at Laglio in Italy. And then it was even further ignited by the local mayor, and he was picked up by a lot of people in the news services like Associated Press and the BBC. Supposedly trying to avoid media attention, they went to Namibia for the birth. So, do you know how the Illuminati controlled the media described this imminent birth? The most anticipated baby since Jesus Christ. Space, back with more in a moment on AM 640 Toronto Radio. I'm a spaceman. This is AM 640 Toronto Radio and A View from Space. Tonight's show is basically the bridge in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. The 35W bridge collapse was a blood ritual sacrifice for the latest in the Mars probes. The Phoenix Mars lander lifted off this morning from Cape Canaveral on its way to Mars, the 10-month journey, 422 million miles. And when it gets there and lands on the north part of the northern tip, the Arctic Circle, as it were, of Mars, it will supposedly begin digging for the building blocks of life, hoping, of course, to hit ice. And, of course, they will hit ice. They will discover that water once was there, and still is, taking us one step closer to aliens exist, building us up for contact. Tonight, on A View from Space on AM 640 Toronto Radio, I'll be talking about that very thing, contact. You see, the bridge collapse will ensure the success of the Mars mission. Because that's what blood sacrifices are for. To your God. To get the desired request honored. And the desired request honored will be that there will be aliens discovered. All leading up to the Antichrist, who of course will claim to be descended from those very aliens and will halt the attack and save the world. Sound like a movie? That's exactly what I'm talking about right now in Angelina Jolie. Only giving you the background, the connections. You see, the Antichrist is going to have a mark. The mark of the beast is not a chip. I do not believe for a moment it is a chip. You know what I believe it is? I believe it is a tattoo. Because if you research where tattoos originated, they originate in voodoo. where the tattoos were put on the skin for the outside of the person to show what's on the inside. Each demon that was possessing this person had a design. It went on the man's body. If the man was covered in tattoos, he was loaded with a legion of demonic spirits. You get my picture? Angelina Jolie is a cutter. Do you know what a cutter is? A cutter is someone who slices herself. That's why she collects knives. She wants only the best, highest quality stainless steel, so as not to give her blood poison, so that she may cut herself, so that she may worship her God. Because her God demands blood. Do you get my picture? This they call the most beautiful woman in the world. Let me get to Jolie's tattoos that have become famous because she has been often asked to talk about them in interviews. And that's exactly how they get the message out. Jolie has said that while she is not opposed to film nudity, the large number of tattoos on her body has forced filmmakers to become more creative when planning nude or love scenes. Makeup has been used to cover up the tattoos in a lot of her productions. A lot of times she adds or even changes the tattoos that she has, and has said that all of the tattoos she possesses have a special meaning. Angelina Jolie has 13 tattoos. Among them, a Tennessee Williams quote, which says, "A prayer for the wild at heart, kept in cages," which she got together with her mother, who is now deceased. Micheline Bertrand. And the Arabic phrase that translates to strength of will. She also has the Latin proverb, which translates to what nourishes me also destroys me. Let me come back to that statement in just a moment. And a Buddhist Pali prayer written in the Khmer script for her son Maddox, who is from that area in Vietnam. She also has 4 sets of geographical coordinates on her left shoulder, indicating birthplaces of her children. Over time, she's covered or lasered a few of her other tattoos, including the Billy Bob one, the name of her former husband, Billy Bob Thornton. A Chinese character for death is on her body. And a window on her lower back. She explained that she removed that window because while she used to spend a lot of time looking through windows, wishing to be outside, she now lives out there all the time. But I think that's just for mass consumption. The real story of the window tattoo is not that at all. Not at all. Now, back to this very revealing statement tattooed on Angelina Jolie's body. What nourishes me also destroys me. What does that mean? Just this. Gnosticism was the conviction that earthly matter is evil, and that learning about the nature of spirit matter would lead to salvation. The definition of matter, by the way, is the substance of which a physical object is composed. So anything physical in the universe, material, substance that occupies space, has mass, and is composed predominantly of atoms consisting of protons, neutrons, and electrons, that constitutes the observable universe. All of this universe. It's all called matter. This, I repeat, matter is evil. And according to Angelina Jolie, that's what destroys us all. And that's exactly what the Illuminati believe. Which is the belief system held by ancient alchemists Who were the ancient alchemists and what did they believe? Well, that question defies a simple answer, as the alchemists were different things at different times. Quicksilver, like mercury, scattered, then whole. Also, different historians have offered different interpretations of these ancient scientists. Yeah, they were ancient scientists. So, to get a thorough understanding of the alchemist, you first have to look at the origins of alchemy. Where? What did the bumper liners on this show state? The ancient Egyptian religions. And Greece. That's where the origins of alchemy lie. Egypt and Greece. Then you got to trace its development in the Middle East. You ask the average guy on the street about what the alchemists were, and you'll hear that they were pseudo-scientists who attempted to turn lead into gold, believed everything was composed of the four elements: earth, air, fire, water, and believed in mystical, magical things. This is about the limit of most people's understanding of the art, and for a single sentence definition, it's not altogether wrong, really. But for a deeper understanding of alchemy, you might turn to a chemistry textbook. There's this, according to a college textbook used in the University of Southern California. By about 400 BC, the Greeks had proposed that all matter was composed of four fundamental substances: fire, earth, water, air. The next 2,000 years of chemical history were dominated by a pseudoscience called alchemy. Alchemy and alchemists that practiced were often mystics and fakes who were obsessed with the idea of turning cheap metals into gold. Historians who took an occult spin on this subject looked at the alchemists as true magicians who actually accomplished the work of transforming lead into gold. I've seen how many motion picture directors from Hollywood that have changed celluloid into gold. Beyond this, occultists see the alchemists as religious mystics who tried to discover the secret of purifying man's soul through learning about the workings of nature. Aha! A more deeper understanding of who these alchemists really are, especially in today's society, and our leaders at the top. Space back with more in a minute on A View from Space on AM 640, Toronto Radio.
Deprogramming the brainwashed simply by uncovering the truth. He's the spaceman with A View from Space, AM 640, Toronto Radio.
I'm Space. This is AM 640, Toronto Radio, and A View from Space. You can email me. Thank you for the emails I've already received from you. Emails at two locations: space@640toronto.com or spaceman@640toronto.com. Another view, looking at the alchemists in a more philosophical way, they were religious reformers who worked in secret and used chemical words in a secret code that really referred to theological and philosophical beliefs to escape persecution from the church of their day. A lot like our modern-day Illuminati leaders do. Of course, you can use bits and pieces of each of these theories to assemble a realistic idea of what the alchemists were, but before this is done, a question comes from these theories that has to be answered. And the question is, where do these diverse theories come from? This answer is in the writings of the alchemists themselves. The best way to describe how confusion sets in is to give an example taken from an alchemical writer. Paracelsus, Swiss-born alchemist and physician who lived from the late 1400s to the early 1500s, is a perfect example. He wrote about this concerning the nature and properties of mercury. Or did he mean something else? You decide. He wrote, all things are concealed in all. One of them all is the concealer of the rest, their corporeal vessel. External, visible, and movable. All liquefactions are manifested in that vessel. For the vessel is a living and corporeal spirit. And so all coagulations or congealations enclosed in it, when prevented from flowing and surrounded, are not therewith content. Was he describing mercury? You can really now understand how you can get confused. Paracelsus was said to have been fairly clear in his writings. This passage was not really about mercury, but about the human body. The alchemists intentionally wrote cryptically. Exactly how they do today with their spells through the news media and through television programs, entertainment, and through movies. They write cryptically. It's a hallmark of their act. Artephius, a medieval alchemist, refers to this by writing, "Is it not recognized that alchemy is passed on orally and is full of secrets? Are you so simple as to believe that we could clearly and openly teach the greatest and most important of all secrets, with the result that you would take our words literally?" This is only one of many examples where the alchemical writers refer to the cryptic phrasings of their works. It's a tradition among alchemists and can be traced back to the Greek founders of the art. They say the cipher was passed on from teacher to student orally. The secrets passed on from teacher to student orally. And unfortunately, the code to decipher these texts has been lost. Yeah, right. I can tell you it's written down all right. But only the who's who of the who's who's. And if you're a member of a very important bloodline, are you privy to this purposely hidden, written information? Alchemy's origins are shrouded in the mists of time on purpose. It can, though, as all of the Illuminati beliefs, can be traced clear back to the ancient Egyptians. Metallurgy, mysticism were undoubtedly tied together in the ancient world as the techniques of turning ugly ores into an honest, almost holy metal. It seemed to be a priestly art. In fact, alchemy in Egypt was the domain of the priestly class only. Spaceman AM 640, Toronto Radio. Legend has it that the founder of alchemy was a man named Thoth, or Hermes. According to these Egyptian legends, Thoth wrote 42 books on knowledge. 42 being the number of man, that's a 6. 6 is the number of man. These 42 books on knowledge covered law, medicine, and alchemy. Over time, Thoth, if he even existed at all, came to be looked on as their most high god by the Egyptians. I believe Thoth was Hermes, and I believe Hermes was Nimrod. Thoth wrote, all the law, also medicine, and alchemy, all those secrets. He's been called Hermes, Trismegistus, or Hermes the thrice greatest. There's that 3 again. The perfect number. The triangle is 3 sides. It's the perfect shape to run a world. That's why the Illuminati use it. All work toward the top. And there's only room for one at the top. The work of Hermes, often referred to in early alchemical texts, is supposedly completely lost. They said it perished with the library at Alexandria, along with so much other written material of that time. But Hermes' Emerald Table has been transmitted through Arab sources. It's believed that the 12 principles that were written in the manuscript form the basis for alchemy. See the 12 principles? A 2 and a 1 is a 3. Perfect number again. It's called the Hermetical philosophy by the early alchemists. More on the Emerald Tablet. More on the Phoenix Mars lander. More on the I-35W bridge collapse. Coming up on A View from Space, this is AM 640 Toronto Radio.